I just want to thank the new team before we start off. They've come together and made this presentation. It was a little bit short notice because we weren't sure how scheduling would work, so I do appreciate all the work that went into that, and I'm excited to kind of see where we go this year. But for those of you who don't know, I feel like I've talked too much without introducing myself. My name's Nathan, or Nathaniel. I'm the president. I was the president last year, and I'm going to be continuing that as well. Jamal is also our president this year. We decided, you know what, why don't we both just be presidents, both have that cool kind of role. So Jamal, or Tony Moshi in our server, he is also the president. So we, on behalf of both of us and on behalf of the team, we appreciate everybody for coming out, because we do put a lot of work into this, and it's all to benefit you guys. So thank you very much for coming out. We do have, to start us off this year, or this session, we do have our news breakdown. So typically we have some of our content developers make news stories and present those news stories for everybody to kind of get a general idea as to some of the big things that are going on within the cybersecurity space. It's always going to be kind of related to cyber and ComSci kind of things. So if that piques your interest, that's great. And then we'll go into a little bit of a middle segment. We won't always have a middle segment, but we do this week, thankfully, where anyone who wants to, give a little bit more of a presentation on what's going on or something. It's usually about a 10-minute presentation, just about kind of what's going on. We do a little break. During that break, we do our CCR codes. So that's the codes you're going to be using and the forms you're going to be filling out for us to track your extracurricular hours. This does go towards those. So when we do go into the break, I'll give a couple more minutes I'll talk a little bit more of your ear off during that, just to give a very brief kind of instruction there. And then we will go into our main topic of today, which is exploring SOC and defense security. We do have a guest speaker for that, which we do typically try to get out for you guys. We have Jackson today. So if you had a chance, there was a little bit of a description of who Jackson is and kind of what the talk is about today. And so we do appreciate Jackson for coming out and sharing some of his expertise. So we do also ask that everybody kind of give their attention if they can. But yeah, that's it. That's pretty much all I got to talk about. Thanks again for coming, and I think we can get right into it. So if you guys want to lead it off on the content team, I'll hand the floor over to you guys.
Alright, so I'm just gonna start this off, and for those who don't know me, I'm Vishnu. I'm new on the content team, and in September I'll be going to my second year in the cybersecurity program, and I'm also a new executive member of the team as a content dev, and I look forward to sharing a lot of cool stories with you guys. So I'd like to discuss a very interesting exploit I found within Discord's server invite system, where threat actors gain the ability to redirect users from legitimate and trusted servers to completely different and unrelated servers that target people to install async rat, which is a remote access Trojan, which would, for those who don't know what that is, it gives a threat actor, well, it's in the name, remote access to your computer. And it's called Stealer, which is an information stealer that primarily targets crypto wallets. So to start off, it's important to know how Discord's server invite system works. So the method how this was originally tested was through a feature of Discord server boosting, where Discord allows users or servers to have custom invite links to servers that had enough boosts as through Discord Nitro. So, however, these hijacks occurred on servers which had computer generated, and it also occurred to servers that had standard or computer generated server invites on Discord, not just servers with vanity links. So once server invites on Discord expire, if they're deleted by a server owner or if they're a temporary invite code, threat actors who have server boosts on their own servers could utilize these once former links that belong to trusted servers. And these old invite links would be redirected to these malware with servers that have malicious, servers operated by threat actors with new vanity links, whether it be on old forums or anywhere outside Discord, which is very concerning and strange that Discord even allows that to happen in the first place. So when users are redirected to these servers, they're asked to quote unquote verify by malicious Discord bot, which redirects users to a suspicious external website where Discord asks the user to authorize this bot to gain access to their account. However, like this external phishing website uses a form of social engineering to trick users into opening PowerShell on a Windows computer with a JavaScript file being executed, which copies a malicious PowerShell command. And this command downloads the remote access Trojan and the information stealer, and it uses multiple stages of infection via Pastebin, GitHub, and Bitbucket links. And it is very harmful, but the main takeaway from this is to know that if you're redirected to like a sketchy website like this through a Discord bot, it is definitely an immediate red flag. And if you're being asked to like verify through a suspicious link like this, it's definitely like also a red flag in this instance, and it could infect your computer and also your Discord account. So I'd put it in the Discord chat, but I recommend reading through this article since it has a lot of sophisticated information and a lot more detail about it. So I posted it in the ISSessions Discord chat, so you guys can read through that if you'd like. And that's all I got.
All right. My name is Nick, and I'm going to be talking about a really interesting story that I found that talked about how over 70 Microsoft Exchange servers were exploited by quote unidentified threat actors who were able to inject malicious code into the login pages of like Outlook, uh, mail, web pages. Um, okay, and so the Russian cybersecurity vendor Positive Technologies, during their investigation, found that two different types of keyloggers that were written in JavaScript were found on these login pages. One of one of the keyloggers was used to save the collected credentials to a local file that was accessible over the web, and the second keylogger was one that immediately sent the collected credentials to an external server just out there. Um, this attack, according to PT, seems to have been a continuation of a attack campaign that was first logged back in May of 2024. It targeted 65 victims in 26 different countries worldwide. Um, PT also notes that the first compromise dates all the way back to 2021. The attack involved exploiting known flaws in the Microsoft Exchange servers, such as proxy shell, to install the malicious code. Uh, Proxy shell refers to a chain of attacks that exploit vulnerabilities affecting on-premises Exchange servers to achieve pre-authenticated remote code execution. Um, there's a list here of the exploited vulnerabilities. You guys can do some research on those CVs and read about them. Uh, the malicious JavaScript code reads and processes the data from the auth form and then sends it via a XML HTTP request or XHR request to a page on the compromised Exchange server. 22 of the hacked servers have been found in government organizations as well as IT, industrial, and logistics companies. And the top 10 countries that were affected by this so far have been Vietnam, Russia, China, Taiwan, Pakistan, Lebanon, Australia, Zambia, the Netherlands, and Turkey. This is a developing story, and I'm going to continue to read about it because I don't know about you, but I kind of want to see where or how these unidentified threat actors, like where they end up. And that's all I got.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Riyad, if you don't already know me. I'm going into my fourth year now in cybersecurity program, and I'm also one of the new content developers. And I'm going to be presenting exposing password hackers to for them vulnerabilities. And can you guys hear me? Hello?
It's a little muffled,
Yeah.
but we can hear you.
Okay. 'Cause someone was telling me that I'm muted. All right. So can you guys hear me better now?
Yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
that's good.
All right, perfect. All right, so I'm going to be talking about two recently discovered vulnerabilities in Linux that could allow attackers to leak sensitive information, specifically password hashes through core dumps. Now, these vulnerabilities were found in two common crash handling tools. So the first one is a port, which is used by Ubuntu, which I'm sure we've all used like many times now. And the other one is the systemd core dump, which is used in Red Hat and Fedora Linux distributions. So both of these tools are designed to collect crash data when a program fails, but due to race condition, which is a flaw that happens when two operations run at the same time in an unexpected way. It allows attackers to take advantage of how these tools handle crashes in programs that run with elevated privileges like SUID binaries. So SUID, or set user ID, is a permission that lets a user run a file when the permissions of the file owner usually root. And that's important because it means any data in that program's memory could be very sensitive. So here's how the attack works on a really high level. So with a port, the attacker used a technique called processor ID reuse, and they trick the system into reusing the same process ID and crash the privileged program in a controlled way. And this causes a port to save the core dump in a space where the attacker can access. And now with the systemd core dump vulnerability, the attacker crashes the SUID program and then quickly replaces it with a non-privileged one. And when the system core dump checks permissions, it mistakenly looks at new unprivileged file and grants the attacker access to the core dump from the original privileged process. So this is a really serious issue because those memory dumps contain things like password hashes from the /adc /shadow, which an attacker can then just crack offline with the hash. And to protect against this, patches have been released for both vulnerabilities. And it's also recommended to disable core dumps for SUID binaries by running the command you can see at the bottom of the slides. And yeah, that's pretty much the overview. Just two small timing flaws that can lead to big security risks. And I hope you guys enjoy the next set of presentations, and thank you for listening.
Alrighty, so now it's time for the middle segment. Forgive me, I'm a little bit nervous. Usually I'm okay with these, but for some reason today I'm a little bit nervous. So we'll just go through my slide deck, and we'll start with a little bit about me, if you guys don't know me, and then we will get into the content. So if we could have the next slide, please. So just a little bit about me. My name is John. I'm a cybersecurity student from, Ontario, Canada. I stream on Twitch. I like to game, and I love learning new things and sharing them with people like you, like-minded folks. It's very, interesting for me, and to talk to an audience that understands what I'm saying. So that's always something that I look forward to. So today we're going to be talking about Warp Terminal. I wanted to do a talk on this last year. It just kind of didn't work out with the timing and stuff, which is good because now I've had like 8 months to play with it. So they just had their 2.0 release this week, I believe, and I just wanted to go over a few of their features in the software and see how we can use that to our advantage for pen testing, because it's not just about building software all the time. So next slide, please. So just like I said, we go through the agenda really quickly. So we have a couple slides, should take no more about 10 minutes. The demo as well, I'm hoping works. I was working on it yesterday, and then I took a pivot and decided to switch the demo up. So hopefully this one works. We'll see in real time. I was testing it before the stream went live, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, we'll just a quick little agenda of the topics that we're going into. So I'll take next slide, please. So I just prepared a little bit of a script for this one. The other one I'm kind of doing off the top, but I wanted to write this one just so it's a little bit more cohesive, I guess, if that makes sense. So let me get some water here. So every breakthrough in human-computer interaction has been about removing barriers between human intention and digital reality. Decades ago, security professionals worked in isolation, manual processes, disconnected tools, and endless content switching. A single penetration test would usually mean hours of sequential work: scanning, analyzing, exploiting, document, rinse and repeat. Just reading the chat. The bottleneck wasn't specifically our intelligence or creativity, it was the friction between what we wanted to accomplish and what our tools would allow us to do. So the most skilled security professionals have always thought like orchestrators, system orchestrators, thinking about every single part of the plan, not just operators of the tools. They see the attack surfaces as symphonies of interconnected vulnerabilities. They see and understand that true security assessment requires parallel thinking, which is something we'll get into in the presentation, which is like kind of, reconnaissance, information exploring, while documentation captures every single insight and tool output in real time. But our tools that we've had for Kali or any kind of Linux testing material or any machine testing, they never really matched our mental models. We've always been forced to work sequentially in a world that demands parallel processing. Until now. Today, with Warp 2.0 release, and I've tested this extensively with parallel agents, which is really cool, we're witnessing some type of emergence of something unprecedented. Interfaces that think like us, think like security professionals. Multi-agent systems that don't just execute the commands, but they understand the context, they share the intelligence, and they coordinate complex operations, all at the speed of human insight or faster, which is going to be amazing for us. This isn't just about replacing our expertise, right? It's about amplifying it, right? We have to give every security professional the capability to think and act like a coordinated team of specialists, even when you're working alone. The future of cybersecurity isn't just about better tools. It's about better collaboration between human creativity and machine precision. It's about a way that we can defend against elite level security capabilities so that every professional can defend against threats that evolve at machine speed. Welcome to security testing that matches the pace of human insight, or further. All right, that was just the intro script that I had written. I hope you guys enjoyed that. So next slide, please. So I hope everybody is doing well. It's Tuesday? Nope, Thursday. I'm a little behind. Thursday evening. I hope everybody's doing well today, and I'm glad to see the channel is very full. I'm sure there are a few viewers on YouTube as well, so I appreciate everybody for watching where they have attended from. And yeah, so let me ask you a question in chat or in person, whatever. You can raise a hand, put a soundboard on. How many of you have actually ever sat through some type of penetration test, just watching the scans crawl by as you wait to move to the next phase? Just waiting for this tool to finish so you can go and do this tool. Obviously, you can put it in different terminal tabs. You can run it in different things. But having them all paired together and focus on the same task, is something at least I have, struggled with when I do kind of practice labs or penetration tests at home. Yeah. So what if I told you you could run your port scan, your vulnerability assessment and exploitation, and the report generation all at the same time? Just agents waiting for the next one to finish. That's what we're going to be doing today, hopefully, if the demo works. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We're just kind of fundamentally reimagining how we can, succeed with pen tests, if that makes sense. So next slide, please. All right, so let's be honest about where we are in cybersecurity right now. We have a lot of people in the industry, obviously, but every day, every hour, every week, the amount of exploits, vulnerabilities, they keep popping up. They never stop. They have this massive problem. We feel the pain every day. I don't know if the person's in the chat, but I know we have somebody in the server who works on Fortinet applications, and every other day I find another Fortinet leak and I put it in the chat and they're like, not again, and that's their life. And then that's what, it's fun. I get it. I would love to be something like that as well, but it gets a little bit much, right? So we have all this infrastructure, but we're still doing pen testing the way that we've done it for like ever. So I feel like this is a really good introductory point to split off into this revolutionary terminal tools. I think that was it for this slide. No, okay, a couple more. Yeah, so we'll just talk about the reporting timeline, obviously. Usually you go to reconnaissance, and then you go for vulnerability scanning, then you go for the exploitation, then you go to document. That's a super small list. Usually it's like 6 to 11 steps, just kind of condensed it for you guys, so you guys could kind of see the, the median of like what the steps are. Yeah, so there's a lot of pain points. I'm sure you have pain points when you're switching from an Nmap tool, and then you go to a debuster tool or some type of proxy burp suite tool, something like that. You're switching context with your brain over and over and over again. For me, I can lose track of it really, really quickly, right? So having something like this I write the plan, I set it up to write in parallel. I want you to do this, and this. Okay, go, right? Perfect. It has exactly what I wanted to do, but it's doing them all at the exact same time. So we can save a lot of time that way. Obviously, the system's not perfect yet, right? And I find a lot of the magic in this is writing the prompt and writing not even the prompt, just writing the instructions for the specific model that you choose to be very, very specific and descriptive. And I find that helps to make a lot of these pain points disappear, kind of like that. I snapped. Obviously, you can't hear that, but trust me, I snapped. So yeah, I guess we can switch to the next slide. That's pretty good. Thank you. So I wish I kind of designed this a little bit nicer, but like Nate said, I kind of scrambled this together, hoping for the best. And so far, everybody that's presented has been really, really good. I really appreciate everybody who's presented so far. They all have really good articles. And just the way that you guys were personable about it and talked it, that was great. So that was amazing. But this is an example of me not having enough time to make it look nice, but at least it's better than, bullet points everywhere. You can kind of see how the warp terminal spawns multiple agents, an agent that does reconnaissance, an agent that does vulnerability hunting, an agent that goes and exploits those vulnerabilities. And then at the end, that agent's just waiting for all of them to be finished and complete the task, right? So that is something that hopefully we will be able to see in the demo today. I mean, not even just in the demo, but maybe if you guys go and download Warp yourself, it's across all platforms, Windows, Mac, Linux, you can do whatever you want. There is a free plan. I don't remember the AI request for it, but to be honest, if you do it right, you won't hit the credit limit, if that makes sense. If you write the correct prompts and you watch what it's doing, you don't really just let it do its own thing, unless you have a very specific set of rules for it. Then you won't really exceed your credits. So that's something to think about as well. And you don't even have to use the AI. Maybe you just want to use Warp Terminal for, going off in a tangent here, but maybe you want to use Warp Terminal for I'll show you guys in the demo, but for character selection. So instead of holding the left arrow key to go all the way back to the beginning of the line or the middle of the sentence, you can just click wherever you want. That's fine. New terminal, new things. So that's something to think about as well. Maybe you don't even want to use the AI from Warp. Maybe you just want to use the new Terminal 2.0, right? It's a very cool piece of software. And no, I'm not sponsored, by the way. I just really like this software. So yeah, so this is kind of a way that we can expand our thinking into how we can kind of like evolve pen test, if that matches with anybody's understanding. That's it for this slide. We can go to the next one. Thank you. Right. I hope you liked my picture that I decided to put here. I saw it. I was like, amazing. Anyway, so we'll talk a little bit about Warp itself. So they have this piece of software within Warp called Warp Drive, and it's a way to share snippets of code or like instructions that you have asked the AI to do into a kind of Google Drive that can not only be shared with your teammates, but actually be shared by the AIs. So the AIs can go and they can read the Warp Drive and they can see, okay, you've set this instruction, so whenever I want to run or build this specific program, I know to go to this directory and use this specific flags because you've set it up this way, instead of just trying the general basic things. So that's something as well to think about when you're making parallel agents running like that. You can create specific plans for them, not just like regular markdown files, which is what you'll see the demo is, but you could create them in Warp Drive specifically and have the AI like talk to the Warp Drive and figure out, kind of have a centralized knowledge base for everything that you want it to do. So that's really helpful. I really like that as well. And you can also install, I don't know if I had this in the original presentation and I removed it, so I think I'll just talk about it quickly, but I did an MCP presentation last year and you can use MCP servers in Warp. So that's also something to think about. I use this MCP server called Sequential Thinking almost religiously, and it basically turns a non-reasoning model into a reasoning model, which is obviously insane. So that's something to think about. You can plan way better with that. You can use, different context clients to, maybe connect to something that you have online. Maybe you have like a database or a repository online of all your documents that once it's finished, you want it to send it there. Just connect it with your API keys or however your MCP server works, and it'll use the tool. No problem. It'll send it. So you can kind of see how everything is coming together, and you can create this like really comprehensive, structure of agents to do your specific task. I believe that's it for this one. Next slide. I think this might be the demo time. We'll find out in a second. Yeah, live demo time. Okay, so for this one, I'll stream my screen, and then we'll have Sully change the source to be the Discord stream, which shouldn't be too bad. But just give us a second while we do that in case there are any issues. So let me just stream really quickly. And if you want, you can watch Sully's stream, you can watch my stream, doesn't matter. It's for Sully is rebroadcasting my stream to YouTube as well. So that's, why we have multiple streams going. So let me open up Warp, which I have open obviously already. And I was testing it before, so you can see we have the plan. We can just, see the plan in the console. It is extensive, it's not the smallest file. But this is something that I had written. Honestly, it could have been longer. I only wrote this in like 2 to 3 hours with the help of, Perplexity, my goat. Perplexity, love them. But that was helpful. And I think we're getting multiple audio. You know what? I think this is what's going to happen. Is I'm going to have to change the stream audio to my screen. We'll do this. Okay. That should be better. I don't know if I hear myself anymore, but if anybody hears myself twice or hears multiple of me, just put in the chat. But I switched it to the application itself, so it shouldn't be streaming my desktop anymore for the audio, which we might have to switch later. But yeah, so I have multiple tasks outlined for the agent. So the first one is for reconnaissance and intelligence. They have a bunch of tasks outlined for themselves. The second one can go to the another agent. They do, vulnerability scanning, web app scanning. And you might ask, oh well, how the hell are you, or how are you doing this testing? Well, for those of you who don't know, I'll type it in the console so you can see it. There's this type of Docker image called Metasploitable 2, and it's a really like not broken, but it has a lot of like vulnerabilities and exploits that you can run on it just straight from your already like recommended Linux machine, and then you basically run the Docker image and you can run your tests against the IP that it gives you from the Docker image, or I think it's even set to localhost by default, which is something you can do. So there is that. That's how we're able to do all these tests with the test suite, and it's not just me burning through my WSL2 demo or distributions, but it's actually working. I had this generated. Don't really know if the AI is going to listen to it. Obviously, this demo is interesting for me as well. We can see if all the parallel stuff that I have tried with software development kind of leans into the cybersecurity development stuff. So we'll see. And then, yeah, you can see how they have tasks and responsibilities that are outlined very specifically. There's a queue management system, and then like some demo instructions. So we can ask them. We'll just clear the screen. And I guess before I type a few more things, I'll just go over a few more things just about the interface. They have a custom shell prompt. Most shells or most terminals have custom shell prompts, or you can make your own with like Oh My Posh or Starship or something like that. But this is Warp's like a universal shell prompt, I guess. You can pick your model here. I usually go for Claude 4 Sonnet, but yesterday I found out, I asked the model, hey, what model are you? It said, I'm 3.5. So I don't really know. I gotta do some research into this if it's really picking those models that I asked it to, but whatever. And you can add images, context, and you can even speak to the AI if you want, if you don't want to type. So we can always do that as well, which I guess I'll show as well. And then you can see the 3 buttons over here, hopefully on the stream. This is basically like agent mode versus terminal mode, or like it basically auto detects. So you can switch between those with Control I, and sometimes it's not the best, it's still getting there, but it's pretty good at detecting whether you're speaking English or writing like actual terminal commands. Yeah, so let's just go. I mean, we'll try the speaking one. Hopefully it picks me up, even though I have my Discord audio also picking my mic up. So we'll try. We'll say look at the penetration testing document in this folder and pick a task to run in parallel. I'll be spawning 2 or 3 other agents as well. So just know that other agents will be working, and pick an unclaimed task and follow all instructions outlined in the document. Give it a second, and it did it perfectly, I believe. Wow, amazing, great. So we'll just click enter and we'll see how that goes. Usually it's pretty quick, so hopefully we won't have to be waiting for it to think so often. But we can, while that one's running, we can split it off right away, and we can pretty much do the same thing. I'm just gonna copy the text here so we don't have to rewrite that. And also let's make sure we go to the right folder, warp to demo, and then we'll just make sure that we have everything that we want in there. Great, so you can see it has results folders, task folders. It's going to be claiming stuff. It's creating stuff. It's going to claim a task, and then we will get this one running as well in parallel. And then, well, I would recommend to use it with O3. If it doesn't ask you to do it with O3, whatever, it's fine. But we can split it again. Why not? Let's do one more time. So you can kind of see how this can kind of go infinitely. Obviously, you can just use like what's it called? Oh my god, we learned it in like database class. I don't know why we learned it in database class, but it's like it's the way to, like, if anybody knows, just like put it in the channel. But it's like a way to like split up your terminals into like specific windows. I really forget the name, but there's like a bunch of keybinds for it. Anyways, this is a lot easier. You just right click split. It's pretty easy. Even if you use your keyboard and mouse, you can figure it out. So let's do it again. We'll just go to the other folder, and we can see that everything in the background while I'm speaking right now is also running. So we will see. So we'll create another plan with OX. So this guy's doing target discovery for SMB enumeration. It's writing looks like Python. No, it looked like Bash script. Yeah, Bash script. And then it's making the script executable. This one is making another plan for making sure that Metasploitable is working, and it gives you the IP address so it knows what to do. And it's creating a new plan for, looks like, yeah, environment prep and scanning, launching OpenVAS, Nikito, SQL map, parsing the data. Yeah, so you can just pretty much click execute. There's another button that you can see. This one already has it executed, but over in the bottom right here, Control-Shift-I, you can click auto approve. So it won't be asking you for help every single time. You can just trust it to just do whatever you want. I would recommend that you watch this. You don't want to just set it and leave it. It's not at that stage yet where it's perfect, but it is still pretty cool. So I try to set it up. Obviously we can create another one and another one, but I find like this triple view is just easier for us to view. It failed here, it looks like. So yeah, I mean, we'll just see how it goes. This one's creating some more stuff for the coordination system. This one says that vulnerability assessment is claimed and being worked on. This one says Docker target discovery and SMB enumeration are available, even though, oh, he's probably making the script for that. That's probably why. So because these are taken, you can take these other tasks and work on them. So it's just, it's a pretty cool kind of thing to see. Like I probably spent a couple hours just looking at this yesterday, just like watching it run and, work in succession. And yeah, we'll try this one and see if this one goes off as well. Obviously, it's having some issues with pinging it, even though it found the correct IP addresses. See, it's looking through all my stuff. It's listing the Docker. It's going through, the actual container image. It's saying that it's reachable. So it's basically just like, it really checks everything that you need. And for example, if you run a command that yourself, you don't even use AI in parallel, you just run an nmap command and you put the wrong flag, it'll start generating a fix based on the error message or the error block that you get from Warp. It's honestly, it's a way to speed up your workflow. It's not even just like using a handicap tool. Like it's something that kind of just speeds up your knowledge intake or understanding of why something isn't working. And obviously this is not something to rely on. This is something to help you do your normal tasks, right? You still have to interact with it. You still have to write certain things to do exactly this or that. If you just let it do whatever it wants, you're gonna run into a mess, especially in production. I wouldn't recommend that. But it looks like some of these things are completing successfully here, so we'll wait a couple more minutes and then we'll switch back to the presentation. I'm really happy the demo worked as well as it did. I don't know if it actually, see, some of these things are failing. I don't know if it actually worked as well as I think it did, but I'm glad that at least we're seeing a bunch of stuff happening on the screen and things that I can explain to you. So it looks like they were running the agent coordination task to see who was processing certain things, and then they had an error in the script, so they're trying to fix it. It goes on and on and on. It's kind of like Inception, it just goes insane. I've never had that issue. But anyway, so that's Warp running in parallel execution for a cybersecurity focus. You can do it for many things. This is just one of the avenues that you can go down. And yeah, I mean, I hope you guys like this. I mean, we're going to go back and talk about it a little bit more, a couple more minutes, and then we'll go on break. But this is pretty much it. How about this? We'll switch to the presentation now, and we'll let this go in the background. I'll even keep streaming if you guys want. And we'll just do the presentation, and we'll come back to it right at the end, and we'll see where it ended off. So I guess if, Sully, if you could go back to the presentation on the stream. And then that will be great. And we'll just continue with this. Yeah, so just next slide if you can for me, that would be very helpful. And yeah, so we're just gonna break down a little bit of what you saw. the numbers, Mason. What do they mean? No, I'm kidding. Sorry, I had to. I was writing it and I was like, amazing. But yeah, so obviously you can see what the speed increase can be like running multiple agents in the same context, in the same universe, running all the same, task or different tasks, but all the same, general, this is what I want to accomplish type of thing. Like that's, you can kind of see how it can be not excelled, but accelerated. That's there's the word, accelerated and sped up, and it still requires human interaction, but it definitely takes off a lot of the stress and issues I find with doing like pen testing under the guise of like CTF challenges or labs that have timers. Like for example, for my class, they make us use a site or whatever to do our labs, and the site has like 50 gigs of RAM, but they're running like 10 machines, so it's like under 4 gigs of RAM per machine. Yeah, so it's pretty bad. So sometimes you're really just waiting there, and I'm thinking, man, if I could run this like A on a computer that is has solid RAM, or B just run it in parallel, that would be super cool. It would be able to really speed up the process there. So I think that's it for this slide, and then I have just a final conclusion slide. If you could go to the next one, and then we can hit the break, or check the terminal and then hit the break. Oh, yeah, next slide. Perfect. Thanks. So where does this leave us, right? And I want you to think about this as we wrap this up. So what you thought and what you've seen today isn't just like a cool demo of like a terminal that is new and I'm trying to like get people to use it. No, it's it's really like a preview of how we can evolve cybersecurity, like how it can change for us, right? The future really belongs to cybersecurity professionals who can think strategically and coordinate intelligently, not just execute tools, based off of like, what you remember in class or reading a textbook, like actually understanding the concepts. Like this helps you get there. And I really think that, even at the individual level, it means that even like junior level pen testers can kind of work as like a coordinated team of specialists, as if they had, as if they were the senior and they had a bunch of juniors beneath them, even though they are still a junior. It just kind of gives them a little bit more of a level playing field. And even for the industry level, it's still it's still valid because it'll address like the critical skills that some of the pen testers are missing. Like obviously, with most pen testing, you know a lot of general just avenues and ways to attack and understand how computers work and talk to each other and stuff, but you still don't know everything. I think Jamal said this earlier. I don't even know if he spoke, but I think he said this in a team meeting earlier. He said, we don't know everything. Like nobody knows everything, right? So this kind of can address the critical skills shortages of very specific and niche tools that maybe some people, or capabilities that people don't really understand how to use. So this technology exists today. We can use this right now. We can use it for cyber. You can use it for coding. You can use it for planning your grocery list. I don't know, whatever you want. It's just a really nice, cool way to interact with the computer now. And yeah, I mean, I that's it for me. I really hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. I'll be around for questions afterwards in the chat. You can ask now, whenever works on break. You can shoot me a DM, whatever works, let me know. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't think, I'll just switch to my tab again for the stream. You don't have to stream, Sully. I'm just checking if it works. Yeah, so one of them finished, and one of them was doing an Nmap scan. It looks like they finished. They found one port open on port 5353 for the service 0conf. I've never seen that service, but then again, I'm not a cybersecurity professional yet. This one looks like it finished some locks here, and it was able to check some specific things. But yeah, honestly, that's pretty much it. You can see that it's all still working in parallel, and I hope everybody kind of enjoyed that presentation, and we'll go on, we'll head on break now. So I thank you for your time, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks for that presentation, Chrono. Yeah, we're gonna take a quick little break now before our guest speaker Jackson takes the floor. I'll be adding the link to the CCR form in the stream questions channel. So look out for that. Fill out the form, and yeah, we'll reconvene momentarily.
Yeah, thank you, John. If anyone has any questions about the CCR form, please just post it in stream questions. We're happy to help because I know some people might be newer to the club, and we're happy to help.
All right, everyone. We're back. Um, as mentioned in the session description here, our guest speaker is Jackson. He's a Tier 1 team lead at ISA Cybersecurity and a Sheridan alum. Tonight he'll be diving in, exploring SOC and defensive security. Welcome, Jackson. The floor is yours.
Hello. I'm just gonna share my screen real quick. Just let me know, sir, if you guys can see my screen. Can everyone see it all right?
Yes, we can see it.
Oh darn, I'm getting feedback myself.
Usually I find muting the stream or the YouTube is the best.
I'll just stop watching the stream. There. Okay. Oh. Yeah, so like was said before, my name is Jackson Gorney. I am now a Tier 1 team lead at a company called ISA Cybersecurity. Basically, I lead a team of Tier 1 analysts and basically make sure everything's running smoothly. So today I'm going to be talking about exploring SOC and defensive security. My thought was if we have a lot of students in the audience, then I can kind of give a bit of a like beginner's look at some of these things, some stuff you might not learn in your classes about how things like SOC and defensive security like really works in the industry. Because I remember going into my co-op and I was like, I barely learned any of this in class. It was a lot of just things about how cybersecurity companies work and how cybersecurity in companies work that I didn't really get a good idea of. So I kind of want to give a better idea of that. So just a little quick agenda. So I'm going to do an introduction to me and my career a little bit. I'm going to talk about my company, kind of not as a plug, but kind of as an introduction to some kind of security firm some of you might work at someday. I'm going to talk about some SOC concepts and then kind of a high-level look at some roles that you might get into right away or maybe something you want to look into in the future. If you're a SOC analyst, you know the bread and butter is alerts. So I'm going to talk about alerts, how they work, and some common ones that we might see and how you might investigate them. Then I'm going to talk about some different SOC technologies and kind of the differences between each. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of like basically being a SOC analyst. And then I'm also going to talk about DFR, which is something I've gotten some experience in. And then we're going to have some questions at the end. So just introduction for me. So I got this professional headshot done recently. I figured I may as well flex it. I'm a Sheridan graduate from the information security program. I think I graduated summer of 2023. And I was an ISS exec at that point. I did it for 2 years. I was a content developer, and then I was an event manager. So I did it for 2 years. It was great. I highly recommend it if you're a student right now. And yeah, so then just like most people in this program, I did my co-op after my 3rd term. I started as a cybersecurity analyst co-op at ISA Cybersecurity. Did that for 8 months. Went back to school. And then when I graduated, I became a cybersecurity analyst full-time. And then I was a full-time analyst for about 2 years when I was promoted to a Tier 1 team lead. So basically, I lead the team I used to be on. And I was promoted in January. So it's been, oh gosh, how has it been 6 months already? But now I basically oversee a team of analysts. It's become more of a leadership role. I do things like look at more of the high level, how the team's doing, how we can improve, how I can make things easier for people, and so on. Yeah, so my company, it's called ISA Cybersecurity. We're a security firm that's located in Etobicoke. Across the company, we provide a variety of security services, which includes SOC, which I'm going to explain more later, GRC, which is I think it's General Regulatory Compliance. I don't remember what the G is. DFR, which is Digital Forensics and Incident Response.
as well as red teaming and consulting. The other thing I wanted to say before I get too far on my presentation is I know there are a lot of acronyms. When I was starting off in the industry, I would kind of get so confused with all these acronyms. It feels like every time I learn a new one, another one goes out of my brain. So I'm going to try to explain these as best as I can. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask me after. I know it's a lot. And yeah, back to this. So the company also has a lot of industry partners, such as Microsoft, SentinelOne, Trellix, IBM, and CrowdStrike. Basically, the idea of partners is we partner with these big companies, and then we're able to use a lot of their technologies for things like the SOC and for our clients. So then we can basically give a lot of options because, for example, something like Microsoft Sentinel might not work for someone as well as something like a SentinelOne EDR. So we're able to kind of give the best, or at least most fitting solution for each of our clients. But it's also good on the analyst side because it lets you get some exposure to any of these. So rather than being hyper-focused on one technology, you get some experience in a lot of them, which is something I really liked. And yeah, we act as an MSSP, which is a managed security services provider, and we have 24/7 SOC service. So an MSSP basically means that other companies buy our services so we can manage some of their security for them. A lot of the time it's part of regulatory compliance that they need something like a SOC. And so if a company has a very small SOC team, let's say, sometimes we'll support that. And in some cases, we're most of a company's security posture as a client. So first off, you might be asking, what is a SOC? So basically, it's a security operations center. Sometimes it's called a CIOC, which would be Cybersecurity Incident Operations Center. So basically, it's a team that's responsible for detecting and investigating cyber threats. This could be an in-house or a managed service. So we're a managed service. So basically, our SOC investigates alerts for both our own company as well as a variety of clients. So we could get tickets from a huge amount of clients on a given day, and each client has their own technologies they use. They may be different sized clients, and they have their own security worries. So it's kind of, we get to balance all these different things. And yeah, so you've probably heard of like a tier 1 analyst, a tier 2 analyst, or a tier 3 analyst. So a lot of the times the SOC is split up into different tiers or kind of sub-teams that work on different functions in the SOC. Believe me, this is something I only realized more when I became a team lead, but it takes a village. It's not the kind of thing that you can just do with a few people for the most part. In order to have like a large working SOC, you need a lot of people working on a lot of different things. And personally, I like it because there's a lot of people to talk to. You can see different people who are doing different things. You can find out different things. Go on a random call and learn something about automation or learn something about engineering. And I find that interesting. And in general, SOCs can vary depending on the company, their sizes. I've heard of companies that are smaller where their SOC is one guy and he's also their IT specialist. Or there's companies like Bell, which is like the largest SOC in Canada. In this case, a lot of the time, well, we have a mix. Some of our clients have larger SOCs, but basically we're taking over some of the responsibilities for them. Yeah, the one guy situation. Better hope you don't get breached, basically. Yeah. And basically, we investigate alerts that come from different technologies, such as SIM or EDR. I'm going to explain SIM and EDR later. But yeah, so basically, we are one of the first lines of defenses against cyber threats. We get a lot of different alerts that we investigate, either escalate or respond to, and so on. So now I'm going to go into this. Isn't my graphic? It's from TCM, but I liked it. But what I'd also say is these roles, they're kind of just titles. There's responsibilities that are usually associated with them. But I find if you look at 2 different teams, you can find like 3 different definitions for these things. You might have someone who's a security analyst who's been at his company for 20 years and he fully manages their security. Or you could find someone who's a security analyst and they just got hired last week and they just graduated from university. So there's a lot of different, these titles can be very fluid, and I'll kind of explain where I've seen some of these things be very different. So first off is the tier 1 analyst. That's where a lot of people start. That's where I started. I've seen a lot of people in the industry who started like this and gone on to much higher roles. So a lot of the time you're the person who sees these alerts first. You investigate them as much as you can, and you give a recommendation. You kind of decide whether you think it's malicious or benign, whether it's a false positive, and so on. But basically you try to find as much information, do an investigation, and figure it out. Now here's where some SOCs can differ. For example, in ours, where we're an MSSP, because we have so many clients, the escalation point is the client. So in these cases, we write up a whole escalation kind of email, and we send it off to them, where we basically tell them all the information, all the details from the ticket we found, and we give them a recommendation if it's what we think it is. For example, this is a brute force attack. And then we give a recommendation on what we think on what they should do to stop it or respond to it. So for example, you might say, oh, this is a brute force attack. This person tried 3,000 login attempts in 5 minutes. You should probably lock his account because he got it, or something like that. Now, that's how we do it in more managed services. But in other ones I've seen that are more either in-house or just a different structure, it'll be the tier 1 does some investigation, and then if they think it's suspicious, they escalate to the tier 2 for further investigation. And then the tier 3 kind of acts as a more incident response, like this is a confirmed incident, we're trying to contain it and eradicate it. Now, with us, because we're clients, we don't escalate to the tier 2. The tier 2s, in our case, they kind of act more as each tier 2 is assigned a bunch of clients that they basically cater to and help them with any requests they have, and so on. They're also responsible for things like rule tuning or rule creation. And sometimes they'll be called to investigate more if the client needs it. There's a lot of things that can happen. Clients can have so many requests. Sometimes there are requests you wouldn't even think of. And in that case, that's what our tier 2s do. Then tier 3s are usually more on the incident response side. But I've also seen it sometimes as more of an engineering position. But I'll go into that. It's kind of, tier 3s are the most senior. A lot of the time they kind of wear a lot of different hats. It could be things like threat hunting. It could be things like incident response, engineering, so on. They're the guys, they've been there the longest. And so they know their stuff, and they do a lot of different things. Team leads, I've seen there's a variety of team leads. I lead our tier 1 team. Or I lead our tier 1 team, so I basically look at the team direction. I make sure I take care of training, some administrative tasks. I try to implement programs and stuff to make things easier for our analysts, and just make sure everything's running smoothly, basically. And I see someone in the chat say rule creation for tier 2, so they're like detection engineering. Yes, in some ways, it's not as devoted, it's not as devoted to it as a detection engineer would be, but they're basically able to do it when needed. And then some more specialized roles here. Like I said, a lot of the time these are just titles. A lot of the time I see that similar roles can be held by a lot of different, like these roles can kind of be split up among a lot of different people, or like you might have some, you might not have others. You might have a role that combines a lot. It can really vary. Incident response. Basically, this is when you've been attacked. Something's happened. There's an attacker in your environment. Someone clicked on a phishing email. Someone clicked on the suspicious ad on the side of the page. And there's an attacker actively in your environment. These are the guys you call to get them out. Sometimes it'll be an after the fact thing, where you go in to see what happened, figure out how to improve it for next time. In our case, for my company, we have a DFIR team and a DFIR bench. So I'm part of the bench. So basically, when a client or when a SOC client or a different client calls in and says, hey, we need an incident response, our team is there to help them. And a lot of the time I'm helping to support that, where I shadow and help out when needed. Threat hunting is basically incident response, but there hasn't been an incident. So you're basically always looking for something that could be suspicious. Because the thing about detection rules is they are not perfect. There's always going to be some new attack that's going to get past it, it's not going to be detected, and so on. So the threat actors, or threat hunters, are looking for suspicious behavior that might not be detected in the environment, as well as I've often seen it done where they pick a specific threat group, find their IOC, their indicators of compromise, and their tactics, and then basically they use those to formulate searches and basically look for evidence that they're in in either our environment or any of our clients. And then threat intel is very important for SOC. Basically, community organizations and people all over the world are putting information from attacks into these threat intel feeds. And then you're able to use these threat intel feeds to find new threats and then basically add it to detections. So if you have a threat intel feed set up, as soon as there's something new added, you could then be able to detect it, theoretically. So it's the kind of thing where the security community shares a lot of this kind of information. So you may as well use it, right? If you're not using it, then you might miss things. And then security engineers, I have seen so many different types of security engineers. Sometimes they're the people who implement security controls, such as firewalls or things like EDR, intrusion detection systems, and so on. In our case, they kind of fill a few different duties. Because we have clients, of course, clients need to be onboarded, and sometimes there will be client issues. So when we get clients, engineers are the ones who will onboard them into our SIM or EDR and so on. And they're also the ones who will basically try to fix any issues that come up with the tech. They also do stuff like patching. I've also seen automation engineers because there's becoming more AI now than there was before, but a lot of SOCs deal with a lot of automation because there's a lot of alerts, so we need to do as much as possible to make it as easy as possible for us to investigate them. So whether that's something that adds more information into the ticket that wasn't there before, or even something that handles a ticket completely. I've seen some where it just adds a little bit of information, or even where it fills out a template so you can just use that template to escalate a ticket. But yeah, security engineers, there's a lot they can do. And it's another role that wears a lot of hats, I'd say. Vulnerability management. It's another thing that's very important in SOCs because you want to make sure that there's the least attack surface possible. So you want to make sure that that your devices are as patched as they can be, or at least that you know the vulnerabilities that are there. So vulnerability managers will run scans, looking for vulnerabilities in devices or client devices, and then give recommendations. Sometimes you kind of have, people are slow to patch. I think, I'm sure a lot of you have heard stories where a threat actor gets in, and then you say, okay, well, what operating system was it? And then they go, oh, it was Windows 7. It's like, okay. I wonder how they got in. So it's a lot of keeping things up to date, or at least knowing what's vulnerable. Because if you know what's vulnerable, you can at least detect and set up safeguards, so hopefully that won't be exploited. Forensic analyst, I've heard it used similarly with incident response. A lot of the time I see it combined as DFIR, but the way I see it is usually forensics is more what happens after. There's an attack that's happened, or even it could be something more HR related. For example, if someone has had, someone in the company's taking files they're not supposed to. Someone's just been fired, but you think that they've taken a lot of sensitive information. The forensics analyst will go in there. They do a lot of things like imaging hard drives, and then investigate to see what was suspicious. After an incident, they might come in and help you determine what happened, and then make sure it can't happen again. Malware analysis, also very important, because I don't see every company do this. It's tricky, but a lot of the time malware analysts will use things like sandboxes to look into malware samples that they found. Sometimes it can be something like, we found this file, it's been flagged, we're not sure if it's malicious, so you kind of just test it. Basically take it apart, see what it's doing, and figure out if it's bad or not. Other times it'll be, we were just attacked, we have a sample of their malware, can we see what it does? So we can protect against it next time. And then also that can feed into something like threat intel, because if you put that information out there, other people can defend against it. So I think that just goes to show how interconnected this all is. It's like you can't be as effective as an incident responder if you don't have threat intel. You can't be as effective as a tier 1 if there's not vulnerability management or so on. It just, all these roles kind of work together and make things easier for everyone and make your company more secure. And then we get into management. Generally, I find the duties fairly similar. It's just kind of how low you are to the ground. So SOC manager is more your day-to-day things. In our case, it would be helping out clients. It would be making sure everything's running properly, doing stuff like budget. And then things like your director of security and CISO would be the highest level things. They're in charge of the security for the whole organization. I find a lot of the time they do things like compliance, and they set things like security strategy for the whole organization. If you're the CISO, you're the Chief Information Security Officer of a company. Basically, you're the guy who's responsible for the company's security. They get paid the big bucks, but a lot of the time, unfortunately, I've seen they're the first ones to go if you get hacked. So it's a lot. It's a big job, but it's a lot of responsibility. But yeah, like I said, these role names can kind of differ. Basically, I just say SOC manager, director of security, CISO. It's just kind of a level of how high up you are. Responsibilities can vary. Okay. On to basically talking about alerts. So detecting, investigating, and responding to possible incidents is a large part of a SOC's function. These alerts can be for real or perceived threats. So basically, no detection is perfect. There's always going to be some false positive, something that shows up when it's not supposed to, or it can be something real. I've seen plenty of incidents that were for actually something real, and I've seen many more that were something silly. For example, there's some where if you press the fish alert button on your email, that email will go directly to the SOC. And some people like to use their fish alert button as a delete button. So we'll get a lot like, oh, you're invited to this seminar. And it's just a seminar invitation. It's not like suspicious at all. But of course we have to investigate everything because you kind of got to be a bit paranoid. Yeah. So yeah, if it's suspicious, they will be escalated to the next level, whether that's, like I said, the client or like a tier 2 or tier 3. And if it's a real incident, you might have incident response involved. And like I said before, threat detection and tuning alerts is important because theoretically we want as little false positives as possible. In a perfect world, our alerts would only trigger when it's an actual threat. Of course, we don't live in that perfect world. But on the flip side, we also don't want our detections to miss anything. Because if we suddenly realize that someone's account is compromised, and then someone's coming to us and saying, like, did we get any alerts for that? And we have nothing, then that's also really bad. So MSSPs monitor the spam mailbox for their clients? Not always. It really depends. That's not the best example. There's a lot of alerts. Those kind of phishing are the smaller kind, I'd say. Speaking of alerts, I'm going to talk about some common alerts pretty quick, and a little bit of how we might investigate them. So if it's a phishing alert, we're going to analyze emails for suspicious content, URLs, or files. I'm sure people know what phishing is. It's basically suspicious emails. And then there's a lot of different things that could be related to logins. For example, you might have something trigger when you see a ton of failed logins. It could be a brute force. Things with like Kerberos tickets. It could be Kerberosting. Even something as simple as, oh, so-and-so logged in from a geolocation they're not supposed to. And then you kind of got to think to yourself, is he on vacation in Italy? Or is he hacked by someone in Italy? So there's a lot of things that can happen. And so these kind of alerts try to get it at different stages. So are we checking if they're brute forcing? So before they get in? Are we checking after they log in from a suspicious location after they get in? So it's kind of like, if you know the MITRE ATT&CK framework, like it's kind of looking at different stages and seeing what they might be doing. In fact, a lot of these alerts are matched with MITRE ATT&CK steps. And things like malware, detecting a suspicious file. And then there's also things like possible command and control. So if we see a server connecting to a random weird IP on the internet, it might be that the server's infected and it's connecting to the attacker. And then for network traffic, it might be something like dedicated denial of service, trying to bring a device offline. Like I said, it could be a connection to a suspicious IP. It could even be that the network is getting scanned. Sometimes when it's scanned, like they're kind of open source public scanners, but like sometimes it's just a random device. And then so you kind of got to know about that just in case something comes of it later. And also you have to know because you want to make sure your networks are as kind of resistant to scanning as possible. Because obviously you don't want people to know about your network. And then for things like web traffic, is someone clicking on a suspicious URL? Could that be part of a phishing email? Could they have gone on a weird website? Who knows? And then depending on the technology, sometimes you can detect things like web exploits based on the activity. And then you can kind of see some of the stuff that they're trying, like are they doing things with like looking for directories, or are they? Yeah, there's a lot of different types. But yeah, these are all things that you could detect and realistically see as alerts. Sometimes it can't get to be a lot, and there's a lot of stuff you have to know, because sometimes I've heard that it's easier to attack than defend, because to attack you just need to get in once, but to defend you need to know all of this and you need to see it. Obviously that might be an oversimplification, but it's the kind of thing that you have to know how the attackers think to defend. I'm just going to talk about SIM versus EDR pretty quick. So these are two technologies that are often used to kind of fulfill different purposes in security. So SIM stands for Security Information and Event Management. So SIM, it basically ingests logs from a variety of sources, which could be firewall, application logs, network security, EDR, authentication. As many logs as there are, SIMs can bring them in. These SIM systems then correlate those logs based on certain rules to create an alert. So do you see a lot of failed login logs for a certain account? That might be a brute force. Do you see a lot of suspicious firewall actions? Might be an alert. So you are able to kind of take these logs, look for certain activities, and then trigger an alert based on that. The thing that's good about these two is you can correlate a lot of different logs. So for example, if you see something from a specific user, if you search that user in the SIM, you can maybe see from a variety of log sources and then get more information about their activity. So are you seeing some of their email activity as well? Can you see the links that they went to later? And so on. So like if you see a bunch of failed logins for an account, but then you see that they're going to all these suspicious websites, then you kind of can get a better picture of what's going on. And then EDR is endpoint detection and response. So where SIM brings in a bunch of logs, EDR is actually like an agent on each endpoint. So let's say your laptop has an agent installed. This agent will then monitor activity on your device. It could be a computer, it could be a server, or whatever. And it will basically attempt to detect threats. These are good because they can get a better idea of the system. A lot of the time I've seen they use AI now for detections, but they can also use things like hashes or activity. But in that case, you'll actually see, you can actually get, I think you can get a better idea of what a suspicious file, let's say, is actually doing on the endpoint. So is it attaching itself to other files for process following? Has it created files? Has it created processes? And so on. These are all things you can see this way. And it's like specialized to see it that way. The other cool thing about EDR is there's a response part. So with SIM, it's kind of, you see the logs, you see what happened after the fact. But with EDR, you can actually respond. So if I see a suspicious file on someone's computer, I can quarantine that file. I can kill the process. In some cases, I've even seen it able to roll back ransomware. So it's good in that way because you can just respond to the threat as you see it. And then it's more specialized in a way that you can see what exactly that file was doing and what else you might need to do. So I feel like SIM is good for seeing what's going on, like let's say in an organization in a like wider sense, whereas EDR is like more specific to what's going on your endpoints, what's going on your servers. So it's not that one's better than the other. They both serve different purposes. I think ideally you would have both. But some companies have one or the other depending on their needs. And then if you want to be a security analyst, I think I just figured I'd say some top skills, some things that you can work on or learn about more to kind of get your foot in the door to start. So first off, log analysis. Oh, right click by accident. If you're working with SIM, you're going to see a lot of logs. A lot of time it will parse certain information from the logs to make it easier, but still, you're going to have to read some logs. So it's important to know what you're looking for and how best to look for it. So how are you running searches to figure things out? Can you kind of correlate data from different log sources to kind of get a better picture of the incident, and so on. And then I think like security knowledge is important, obviously. There's a lot of concepts that that's just important to know. For example, things like the MITRE ATT&CK framework are very helpful. And that kind of goes into my third point of you need knowledge of attacks and malware tactics. Because you could look at some logs or an alert and say, oh, that's nothing. But if you know some specific ways that an attacker can get into a system, alarm bells might be going off in your head. There's a lot of obviously there's a lot of ways for attackers to get in, and it's always changing. It's the kind of thing where there's a million types of attacks, and you kind of have to know your stuff to be able to detect them and to be able to recognize it. So you kind of need some knowledge or training in that. I know the stereotype is that you are behind a computer all day and you're not really talking to anyone, but communication skills are important, both written and verbal. If there's a big incident, you kind of have to call people. You have to call the client. You have to call stakeholders. You have to explain what's going on in a way that people can understand. Because the worst thing you can do in one of those incidents is explain something poorly. Because someone high up who's making all these decisions might get the idea that things are much worse than they actually are, or that they're much better than they actually are, and you don't want any miscommunication during those times. The other thing is written communication, because it's a lot of sending emails about alerts. So you need to make sure that you're adding enough details, that you're explaining things properly, and that you're giving like clear, concise recommendations. In some cases, it's like you're only as good as you can explain you are. So you could be the best at these kind of things, but if you can't put it into words, then you look like you're really bad and you're not that effective. Obviously, you need some knowledge of the tools that you're using, whether it's SIM, EDR, firewall, and so on. A lot of the time that can come with experience and time. The thing I find is with things like SIM and EDR, if you know how to use one, it becomes so much easier to learn more. And then once you've learned more, it just kind of keeps getting easier. I know that there's some SIM, I can't remember which one, but you can actually host it on your own device for free and like create your own rules and stuff, like basically a free version. So that's good to get some experience. I don't know if there's any for EDR that I know of, but yeah. And then network knowledge, you're going to see a lot of things you need to know, your IP addresses, your protocols, and so on. It's the kind of thing that like when you're doing it in school and you're seeing you're learning about subnets and protocols and things like that, you're kind of like, why would I need this? I think WASA is one of them. I think Splunk also offers it. I might be wrong though. But yeah, it's a lot of things that might seem silly when you're learning in class, or it might seem like you won't need it, but it is important, and it's the kind of thing that you kind of go, whoa, I did need this later. And I think one of the big things I think that will help you starting out your career in any field is just the ability to learn. Security is a ever-growing, ever-changing field. There's a lot going on. You might, like 2 weeks out of school, your information is going to be out of date. So you always have to be learning. You always have to be increasing your skills, learning more about the tools, learning more about attacks and malware and security in general. It's like, I would say that's one of the most important things. Now, I was a tier 1 for over 2 years, I believe. I feel like I have a pretty good idea of what some of the good parts and what some of the not so good parts are about the role. So one of the pros, it's a great entry point into the industry. There's a lot of roles that are very interesting, but aren't necessarily always entry level. So if you're just coming out of your degree, if you're looking for a co-op, a lot of the time being a tier 1 analyst is a good place to start. It's a great place to develop skills. You get, like, think of all the technologies I mentioned as we're going, and all the different concepts. These are all things you can get exposure to and learn more about. You can see how security actually works at a company. You get hands-on experience investigating alerts, seeing how these incidents can happen at a company, and like I said, how security actually works at a company. Because it doesn't always, like, the idea you get while you're in school doesn't always translate into real life. And the thing is, there's a lot of different paths to advance depending on what you're interested in. You could go more the tier 2 level, you could go threat intel, you could go incident response. There's so many roles that you could build into depending on what you're interested in. So this kind of thing that, like, it's a great entry level. And then within the SOC, there's a lot of places you can learn and like, kind of grow into. Another con, now into some cons. I'd say it is entry level. You're kind of at the bottom of the ladder. Obviously, the idea is that it should be quick moving. Hopefully you'll get promoted quickly, but it doesn't always work out like that. This could be a pro or a con depending on how you like to work, but it is shift work. A lot of the time now I've seen that it's 12-hour shifts, and you could be expected to work night shifts. There's some people I know who love night shifts. There's some people I know who hate night shifts. I'm personally not a huge fan of them, but some people are very different. The other thing is alert volume. Alert volume and alert fatigue is a big issue in SOCs because there are a lot of alerts, and if things aren't tuned properly, it can be a lot to handle, and it can be a lot of repetition, like I say in my next point. So basically, I think it's a good job for learning, getting experience, and starting off. But then there's ways you can go up from there if you kind of prove yourself. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about DFIR, which is Digital Forensics and Incident Response. Like I said, I'm on my company's DFIR bench, so I've gotten some experience with helping out with investigating incidents and responding to them. So it's a combination of digital forensics and incident response. I know that must be kind of a no duh, but basically it's a combination of the actual forensics, which is investigating and finding evidence and so on, and then incident response, which is actually the act of containing and eradicating an attack. So these are the people who are called when an actual breach happens. They investigate and respond to a cyber attack. They determine what the attacker did based on a variety of tools and contain the incident, and then help to prevent future attacks. Personally, I find this stuff very fun. I know a lot of people who have a lot of fun with this kind of stuff. It's kind of like you're playing a detective. You're being a detective, figuring out what the attacker did, as they might even be in this system still. So it's a lot of the time it's a big time crunch. You need to figure out as soon as possible, but I find it very interesting. I've been on a few cases. I can talk about them in vague terms. I've been on a few where people click on a phishing link. Sometimes it's, honestly, most of the time it's clicking on a phishing link. Other times it was bad firewall settings and things like that. A lot of the time companies are not as secure as they think they are, and that only comes out when there's an actual incident that needs to be responded to. A lot of the time DFIR can fit into other kind of purposes, because they know a lot about responding to events and recognizing events. They're good at threat hunting, performing tabletop exercises, which could be preparing for an incident response. Or like a lot of time tabletop exercises are, I've heard them described as like Dungeons and Dragons, but for cyber. The whole idea is you kind of walk your organization or another organization through an attack. You see what are they going to do, how are they going to react, what their plan is, and how the plan works. And then you give them recommendations on what to change, what to do, and so on. And then there's incident response planning, which is sort of similar, but it's more like the helping them set up their plan and basically helping them set up a plan for if there's an incident. Sometimes that plan will be call us, but usually there's more steps. It's a lot of assigning who is responsible for certain things, who's in charge, and so on, because it can get chaotic when you find out there's an attack. So you need that kind of plan to keep you steady. I can tell some short stories from things I've seen. We had one like very small organization call us asking for help with an incident. And then we asked them if they had logs, and they said no. It was an email event. Basically, a account was compromised, and it was sending emails to other people in the company, basically trying to spread phishing emails. And we asked, do you have email logs? And they said, I forget what it was called, but it's basically the oldest possible Bell email server you can have. Probably the cheapest too, but it's basically not supported, so they weren't able to get any help with that. So we kind of had to work around that, which was kind of interesting. Yeah, I feel like I'm off a little over time, but for the most part, that's my presentation. Hope you all enjoyed. Hope it was informative. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn if you want. Also on Discord here with if you have any questions or anything, feel free to ask now. If you have any questions later, you can message me. Yeah, but I'm always open to questions. If anyone has any now, let me know. See some people typing, which is good. The worst thing is when you ask for questions and then it's crickets. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Craziest alert I've gotten so far. So I talked about EDR, where it can detect files on. This is one of my favorite stories. Actually, I think I have two. So I talked about EDR, where it can detect files it considers suspicious on a device. And this was the start of last year, I believe. It detected Helldivers too. And it said it was malware. Which I saw the file and I saw the file path, and it was like user Steam user whatever helldivers2.exe. Check the hash, it wasn't suspicious. And it turns out a lot of the time it flags games because of anti-cheat. Because a lot of the time anti-cheat goes into like the kernel, yeah. So it takes other similar privileges. So a lot of the time it will it'll take that over, and it'll say that is bad, and you need to. And it's the kind of thing where you're like, I know it's not suspicious. Well, why is this guy playing Helldivers on his work laptop? So it's like it's not necessarily suspicious, but it's kind of unwanted. And then the other thing was one of my first weeks on the job as a co-op. We got a client request that they were saying, like using the EDR, can we uninstall Steam and Discord off of all of their company computers? So I just remember seeing that and thinking, somebody got caught. And they ruined it for everyone. Other times we've had like something, someone clicked a suspicious link, and then you go on, you put the hash, or you put the URL on VirusTotal or something, and then the category is something like basically adult videos. So why are they watching that at work? Yeah. Did anyone have any other questions at all? What initial attack vectors have I seen the most often? This was phishing, misconfigurations, etc. For the most part, I think it's continued to be phishing. They always say the human element is the most vulnerable. There are services like security awareness which are trying to train people, but I mean, still, you see a lot of people clicking on things when they're not supposed to, and so on. Because the thing is, it only takes one. Especially for companies with a lot of people who aren't technical. That's a big it's a big thing. I'm trying to think. Other times, I think I've seen some firewall. I've seen a few firewall attack vectors before. Some things off web, like web exploits into other attacks. But I'd say still, like, for the most part, it's phishing. Of course, you always have to be... I've seen a few successful password sprays before, though. Or like a brute force. But those are pretty rare now. Yeah, those are the ones I'd say I'd seen the most. Ever found a reverse shell? I think those are, for the most part, I think those are harder to find those are rarer to find in kind of an alert. I think we found some when we were doing IR. Because that's more of like, I mean, the thing with detection is you'd hope it doesn't get to the level where they're in there. Most of the time we find more initial access or early activities. But yeah, I've seen it on an IR engagement, but not as much on like on like alerts every day. If that makes sense. Yeah. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. I'll still answer questions if there are any, but... Yeah, doesn't seem like anyone's typing. Thanks for listening, everyone. Hope you guys learned something. And yeah, always good to be back at sessions.
Okay, perfect. If anybody has any other questions, I'm sure they could always reach out if Jackson, if you're okay with that. If anybody has like any other questions ever, I'm sure if you're okay with it, we can let them know. Thank you everybody for coming. That's kind of it for what we have today. I appreciate everybody who came out, but I also want to make special notice to appreciate the people who made it possible with the presentation. So thank you for all the content team, for John for his presentation as well. and of course Jackson for taking the time out of his likely busy schedule to give us that presentation as well. Thank everybody for being attentive and for engaging in the chat. I'd love to see when the chat kind of, people talking in there, whether it's questions or just communicating or showing interest. It really does mean a lot to like me, myself, and obviously I'm sure the people that made the presentation for us. So also huge thank you to all of you. There will be future announcements of upcoming meetings. Again, like I said, we kind of try to do this at the end of every month on Thursday, last Thursday of every month. So keep an ear out for an announcement coming there. Overall, though, if anybody has any questions, wants to participate in the club, wants to be part of the next meeting, whether it be a guest speaker or a middle section, or even just presenting a news article you find within the next month, please reach out to us. We're more than happy to have you guys as part of the session as well. Regardless if you're an executive or not, we want everybody to have a chance to maybe bolster their public speaking or to just share something they're interested in. So again, I appreciate everybody. Make sure if you haven't already to do the CCR code. If you were here, just shoot a message to myself, Jabril, Warsam, Jamal, like anyone from the executive team. It'll get to someone who can help out. But yeah, I appreciate it. That's all for today. I don't have anything else to say. And again, I appreciate everybody, and I'll see you guys around. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for attending. Everybody who's left here. Hope everybody has a great night. Peace out.